Let's move on to the other big global story and development that WION is tracking at this hour. 5 months after the chaotic evacuation of US troops from Afghanistan, testimonies from multiple commanders involved in this operation have now been released to the public. Details from the final days of the evacuation have come to light, from the planning to the life and death decisions made daily by US soldiers at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. The report also went into quite a lot of detail into the 26 August suicide attack at the airport, which had killed 13 US service members and up to 170 Afghanistan citizens. According to the 82nd Airborne Division Command Sergeant Major David Pitt, the Marines guarding the Abbey Gate were horribly exposed. And with the US having to partner with other countries, all running their own evacuations, it was quite difficult to coordinate on security matters. Pitt further said that it was clear to those on the ground that there was a high probability that an attack was incoming. The report revealed that unlike the north and west gates of this crucial airport, which both had methodical checking systems in place and a minimized area of exposure, the Abbey Gate was just a large parking lot full of people, and that there were people sitting inside the checkpoint for days just waiting for entry. The presence of other countries too meant that effectively everyone was responsible for security, not just the US Marines. Meanwhile, CENTCOM's investigation further noted that one reason that the Marines were so exposed was that they focused on getting as many people through the Abbey Gate as possible. And while the US forces had wanted to close the gate on the evening of August 25, British forces requested that the gate should stay open since they had yet to complete their own evacuation process. It was then that it was decided that the Abbey Gate would in fact remain open until 9 a.m. on August 27th. Investigators later concluded that closing the Abbey Gate before August 26 would have isolated British forces and could have led to a conflict with the Taliban. The CENTCOM report also outlines that senior White House and State Department officials failed to grasp the Taliban's advance on Kabul and resisted advances or efforts by US military leaders to evacuate US embassy personnel and the Afghan allies weeks before the capital's fall. Now, this delay ultimately placed American troops in great danger. The investigation now provides a full account that is currently available to the public on the evacuation operation, which spanned for over 17 days and became one of President Biden administration's defining moments. For more perspective, joining us now from Islamabad is WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik. Anas, thanks so much for joining us. Some details, and in fact disturbing details, coming to light about the Kabul takeover and the evacuation operations. Reports suggest that the Marines guarding the crucial Abbey Gate, visuals of which we all saw, were horribly exposed. And with the US having to partner with other countries, all running their own evacuations. You were in Kabul at that time and covering all the latest updates from Afghanistan. Tell us more.
Well, absolutely true, Priyanka. You've mentioned about the report, and that is indeed the reality. It's not just the Marines, but the troops from other countries as well who were exposed. And as the report says that Abbey Gate was just a parking lot full of people. Well, that is true because for the fact that Abbey Gate's proximity to the main entrance of HKIA, or the civilian side of the Hamid Karzai International Airport, that being one. The other being is the fact that it was much more accessible and much more convenient for all other partner nations to station their troops and carry out their evacuation processes from there as well. The report mentions about how North Gate and the West Gate was secure, one being that West Gate was practically out of bounds, and the second, the North Gate, was in control of the NDSS 0 unit, the one that was left behind, and eventually that was evacuated as well by the US forces. So people flocking in at the Abbey Gate, that was understandable. The Marines being exposed, yes, they were exposed, but there were some barriers or checkposts that were there, and by the looks of it, before Abbey Gate was the Baron Hotel Gate, where the British soldiers were stationed as well. Beyond that, it was all being checked by the Allied forces. So yes, the Marines might have been exposed, but the bigger problem is with regards to the security lapse and with regards to the planning, because whatever that we saw, it just did not happen overnight, and that is what the bigger question is, that when the Marines were being stationed did nobody ever plan about the security lapses or possible security plans for those Marines so that this tragedy could have been averted? Priyanka?
Absolutely, Anas. You've summed it up quite well for our viewers, but I just want to expand on that. From whatever you've just said, and you were in fact in the midst of the action when it was happening in Kabul in Afghanistan, all these reports seem to outline the relentless chaos, the lack of planning, which drove such a crucial mission. So was the US essentially ill-prepared to handle the unknown elements, especially the quick advance of the Taliban?
Well, taking the lead from your last bit, not just the US, in fact the Taliban themselves were not prepared by the looks of it, and the fact that they had a walkover, it was a surprise to them as well. In most of the provinces, the US was indeed ill prepared, to the point that I was in Kabul, and on the 15th of August, the day of the takeover of the Taliban, it was the same date when the US embassy had put out a tender, and rather an on-site inspection of a tender that had called for making a road from Masood Circle to the inside the US embassy. That's about 1.5 kilometers. That's how much the US side was ill planned, and they did not see it coming. On the other side, since you've said that about the Taliban's ill preparations as well, again, there was a state of anxiety, panic and fear, and in the absence of a government, people understood, or there was a general sense that the Allied forces would step in. Nobody stepped in, and there were people just flocking in at the airport, desperate people trying to get out of the country. I was at the Abbey Gate itself on the day of the blast. Just 3 hours before the blast, we were reporting from that very point, and we have been reporting from those visuals as well. We saw the use of Sten guns, where we saw the use of heavy use of aerial fire as well, that were being done by Allied forces in order to disperse people. So it clearly goes on to ensue that there was one thing, that was lack of planning and lack of paying heed to the ground realities. Priyanka?
Right. Anas Malik, our Pakistan Bureau Chief, thanks so much for summing that up for our viewers, and thanks for joining us on WION. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.